Dull Mode, the podcast where me and my good mate Dave pick a retro game and try and pair it with a cocktail. Today we're talking about System Shock, and because I barely played it, we've got a ringer in, a guy I know from the internet, and that's a guy called Rich. Rich, tell us about yourself. Why are you picking up the slack for us on System Shock, of all things, today?
I've been playing this series for quite a while. I think I picked it up first in the early 2000s. Found it on an abandonware site called Home of the Underdogs. I visited it because I had a fairly lackluster PC at the time. When it was bought in, I think it was 2000, it was alright. Pentium 3, 64 meg of RAM, pretty decent hard drive, but PCs just shot on at a pretty rapid pace at that stage.
Sorry to interrupt, do you still have it?
Yes, I do. Yeah, it has 192 megs of RAM now. Because I was given a 128 meg stick to put in it. I looked through the site, found System Shock as one of the games that was recommended, and said, oh, I'll give that a go. I've played some role-playing games, I've played some first-person shooters, let's try a hybrid of the two. And I tried the first one, and it was rather difficult to get into. Tried the second one, and it was based on the same engine that I was playing. I played Thief, the Dark Project, before, and I found this game used the same engine, and picked it up, and I loved it. More recently, I was one of the backers for the Kickstarter for the System Shock remake.
Yeah.
Which turned out to be a bit of a pop of a project. Took 7 years to actually complete. They did eventually get a proper working game out that seems to be pretty decent. But at one point they just got into this complete scope creep, and they ended up with something that only barely resembled the original game. So they took a step back, developed it on Unreal rather than Unity, and when they finally got something out, well, it seemed to be fairly authentic while taking it up to reasonable modern standards for that genre.
When did that eventually come out?
2023.
And more recent than I thought. I played the demo. I don't know how close to release the demo came out. It's still on Steam.
Yeah, that was quite a while before the actual release.
Yeah.
And that was when it was still using Unity.
No, right. Because it's got a bit of Gen 7-itis about it. It's all very one colour and a bit dark and gloomy, and it's got a bit of that about it.
I really like it.
Well, the remake.
I went back and played System Shock Enhanced, which is the one that's on GOG.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is all right, but it's very old and a bit clunky. Let's have a look at this remaster and see if that's any good. And played much more of that.
Yeah. Rich, have you played the original version?
Yes, I played the original. Couldn't get very far because the controls were weird. And then eventually at some point before they announced the remake or even the enhanced edition, somebody who was obviously a super fan of the series announced, here's a mouse look thing that took it kind of more in the direction of its sequel. And I tried that. Bit of work to get it installed, but suddenly I could actually play it the way I wanted to.
I think there's a lot of that. I think there's this kind of you go into certain games expecting them to play a certain way, and I think I haven't played the original. I would have bounced off it very, very hard because I am not a PC gamer. I was just thinking actually how clear it is that Rich is a PC gamer because he's chosen a game based on the engine. Oh, it's on this engine. I'll buy it then. It's like, I'm fully console. I'm like, is it on the Game Boy?
The original was very much made at that time when the consoles were transitioning into the 5th generation.
Yeah.
And to be honest, none of them could have actually given it any justice until maybe the N64, but that was very much a 3D only, and System Shock was 2 years old by the time that it was actually the N64 was even released.
It wasn't a big enough seller to warrant porting either.
No.
I reckon the Jaguar could have given it a good run. I am not joking.
Honestly thought you were going to say the Atari Lynx.
We'll come back to that later. But I genuinely think what the Jaguar did with Aliens vs Predator and its version of Doom, I reckon the Jaguar, and it had enough fucking buttons, for God's sake, it could have had a go. I mean, it would have been the best chance of it running on a reasonably, because in 94 it came out, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, part of the problem was that it was just very system heavy for 1994. 4. The official minimum specs were a 486 GX 33 megahertz, but really I wouldn't want to play it on anything less than a late era 486 or an early Pentium.
You're going to have to put that into non-nerd terms, I think, for me.
The 486 GX 33 was sort of like a early 90s CPU, but what you really wanted was a mid 90s CPU, and one that was pretty good for that time as well.
Okay.
It's one of those examples of a game that exceeds the systems that people are using at the time.
Yeah, kind of the crisis of its time.
Yeah, you go back to in a couple of years with better hardware, and it's, I can play it now.
You took the words out of my mouth, which I was just saying was a crisis of its time.
I mean, it was released just a year after Doom, and even that wanted something that was pretty significant by the standards of PCs that were generally available at the time.
Yeah, I was interested to learn that it came out on floppy disk months before it came out on CD-ROM without the voice acting. Was it without the voice acting, without the video, or both?
Without the voice acting, yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly it would have been very constrained compared to the CD version.
Yeah. I played the enhanced edition.
Mm-hmm.
I played basically, I think I unveiled the map for the entirety of the first floor and was looking for the elevator when I stopped playing and haven't gone back to it. And that took me 5 hours.
One of the interesting things about the game is the multiple difficulty settings for different elements of the game.
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, that it was really, it sort of gave you the scope to choose what parts of the game you wanted to prioritize. But if you'd chosen the hardest plot setting, you'd be more than halfway through your allotted time.
It's 8 hours, isn't it?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. Is it only the hardest one that sticks that on, or is it?
Yeah, the rest of them you can go through at your own pace.
That's crazy. When I was listening and watching to other videos about this game, the reason that I was watching and listening to videos about other games is because Richard here basically picked up my slack.
Richard's here to pick up our slack.
Yes, he's here for the whole thing. Basically, the episode is going to release time with the System Shock 2 remake, which we'll, I'm sure, talk about at some point in the future.
Yeah.
But I don't play RPGs, and I don't play, so this immersive sims, I think I played a little bit of Dishonored.
Oh, that's a good game.
Which I think probably fits into this genre from the little bit I played.
Yeah.
But that's it. It's really not my thing at all. For anybody who doesn't know System Shock, and I think it's actually pretty well known now, as you alluded to, Dave, it sold very badly at the time, and they didn't make any money off it. But it's become a bit of a cult favourite, and even gone beyond that to the point where, you know, these remakes are getting made to a very high standard. It's a cyberpunk styled immersive sim, which is a genre I hadn't even heard of. And it's basically, you're a hacker, you get caught trying to hack a system. The guy who runs the system goes, can you remove the ethical constraints on this system, and I will basically jack you into the network with some major military grade shit. And obviously, shady character says yes, and everything goes fucking wrong from there. That's basically the plot, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
The intro cutscene on Metal Gear Solid on the Game Boy is 40 minutes. So it's like the intro cutscene on this game is about 2, I reckon.
Yeah, about 2 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, and it's all very edgy, very 90s.
Very Blade Runner.
Yes. Very Johnny Mnemonic.
Big skyscrapers and flying cars.
So basically, after that introduction, you do your thing. You do as you said you'd do. Matey does as he said he'd do. You wake up 6 months after getting all your stuff jacked into you, and basically the whole space station, is it a space station, has gone to absolute shit. And this is the plot. This is where you start.
Everyone's dead, Dave. Literally.
They're dead, Dave. Everyone's dead. It's interesting now because it sounds so rote now, but in 1994 it wouldn't have been, wouldn't it? And I kept coming back to this sort of thing as I was playing it. Is there is lots of stuff, lots of plot, lots of design choices, lots of gameplay even, that just seems a bit, if you look at it through 2025 eyes, it's just, yeah, I've seen all this before. But in 1994 I've lost count of the amount of games that I think this inspired. It seems to me a very important game.
Yeah, so it wasn't the first game that you could attribute to being an immersive sim. That would probably be 1992's Ultima Underworld.
Same developer, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was made by Origin Systems, but System Shock was published by Origin Systems, so there was a lot of influence there from Ultima Underworld. But it was a very advanced game for 1994. You weren't getting many other games in the first-person genre with that sort of plot. You weren't getting many games with that, that level of technical sophistication.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like it kind of seems a bit like the Velvet Underground of video games. Not many people played it, but lots of them that did took inspiration from it.
No, I was stunned about how, I mean, okay, the enhanced edition smoothed out some of its rough edges, but the core thing is pretty much the same as far as I can make out, and I was genuinely stunned.
Yeah.
I had to say, everything from, Half-Life ripping off the melee weapon all the way through to the little in-HUD mini-games that you can play being replicated in Electrocop on the Atari Lynx.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Talk about random theories. I had this little Electrocop moment, and then I went back and I played Electrocop for a little bit. And I reckon System Shock rips off Electrocop on the Atari Lynx.
The hacking minigame is a rip-off of an 8-bit era game called Pipe Mania.
Oh, I love Pipe Mania.
Yeah.
Which has been reused in Bioshock, I think, did it again.
Yeah, and was hated by the fan base in Bioshock.
Yeah, tough.
But it's not just that. It's in System Shock, I think there's items that you can pick up in cyberspace, which we'll also get onto later, which put a little mini game in your HUD down in one of the corners, so you can play. I think there's a Pong, and I can't remember what the other one is. Not Pong, Breakout.
Arkanoid.
In Electrocop, when you're waiting to hack the doors, because Electrocop also you've got doors, you've got robots, you've got things to hack, you've got mini games to play whilst you're waiting for the hacking software to work. Electrocop basically inspired System Shock. I'm just going to put it out there.
Okay, if we're going down that line.
Go on.
Okay, so that patent that Namco had for quite a while, loading time minigames.
Yes.
They ripped it off from a 1984 Commodore 64 game, and nobody in the patent office in the US actually knew about it. So Namco should have never had that patent because there was 10 years of prior art.
What was it?
Invadaload, which was a fast loader for cassette-based games, which not only accelerated the loading of blocks from the game, but also included a mini game that could be played while waiting for the main game to load.
Awesome.
So it was used for Mastertronics games.
Oh, I remember them.
So yeah, I remember Mastertronics too. We mentioned Joe Blade before, Dave.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Apparently, Joe Blade 2 on the ZX Spectrum had a game called Skyline Attack.
Oh, okay.
On the loading screen. I wonder if that's what I've got in my brain.
My loading screen entertainment was leaving the room for 5 minutes with the Amstrad.
Yeah, and hoping it loaded.
Yeah. If you watch it, it will crash. If I'm not in the room, it will work.
It's very hard to pin down the earliest game in certain genres, but the ones that definitely played the most influence.
Mm.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that actually a really good segue to System Shock, because as we alluded to before, it wasn't successful at the time. It gradually, quite slowly, built up a bit of a following, and it got there eventually. I think lots of PC magazines were very banging its drum, and not just for the technical things as well. Just for this is I think we mentioned it, when something comes along and is a new genre. Parappa the Rapper, weird. That's a weird fucking juxtaposition if ever there was one. System Shock and Parappa the Rapper. But it was the invention of a genre, and it was the invention of a genre in 1996. So the invention of a genre in 1994, as you say, in Ultima Underworld, probably.
Yeah. Like if you want to look at sort of predecessors, you've got the whole dungeon crawler sort of thing with Dungeon Master and those other very early proto sort of first person RPGs. But at the same time, System Shock, it defines a lot of the genre.
Yeah, the amount of games it quite clearly influenced is incredible. Obviously, there are direct influences like Deus Ex, obviously Bioshock goes without saying, things like that, but so many other things. Interesting enough, I was reading earlier today that they consciously took out dialogue trees from System Shock.
Yes.
early in development. They were sort of going through what was important, and they wanted to basically, as much as it feels to me like, I guess, not a particularly story-based game, and I think that's probably because of the sort of, I'm going to use the word emergent story that happens. You discover the story and you have to read the logs or listen to them, choose one, don't try and do both.
Yeah.
And all that sort of thing. And I think even that, was it the first game with audio logs? I couldn't find a record of a game previously that had audio logs in it, and they're just an absolute stock and trade of almost every game that comes along these days.
Yeah, I think it came at the stage where the extra capacity that CDs provided really gave scope for that in a way that wasn't possible before.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. For either good things like that or bad things like the Resident Evil intro movie.
That glorious Resident Evil intro movie.
Well, FMV just seemed to be this thing that a lot of people just grasp onto at the time, and had been since the Laserdisc.
Yeah. Dave, what have you played of System Shock, the first one?
I've played very little of it. I bought on GOG the enhanced version of the original. Played that. Took a bit of getting used to. Gotta be honest, it is old. It is rough. But thought it was really, really good. Loads of features that I wouldn't have expected from a game of that age. I had to look it up because I knew of System Shock 2. I got my first PC around 2000-ish. And System Shock 2 was... PC gamers used to hark back to it as one of the best games ever made, which always made me think, I should go and play that. But I'd never went back and played the original, just because I don't think I could find it at the time. Went back and played the original for a bit, probably a couple of hours. Put on the enhanced version, which I got at the same time for like, I don't know, £8 or something silly, and really enjoyed it. It's a faithful recreation of it. It doesn't try to do too much. It doesn't try to make it like a glaringly, obviously modern game.
Yeah.
There's still the undertones of that original game are in there, but with a lot of quality of life improvements, a lot of things to just make it a lot easier. It keeps some of the difficulty in there, though. There's a thing with passcodes where you get a digit of a passcode at the end of each level.
Yeah.
And when you get to the end of the game, you have to remember what digit you got and in the order you got it.
It's not short either, is it? I saw this.
No, it's 9 levels.
Myself.
I think it's 9.
Yeah. Christ almighty.
Yeah, which if you don't know about in advance, you're not going to think to write that down or anything.
But I think that is the game in general, and I think Rich, sounds like you played it closer to the release than either of us did. To me, it was like the stuff that you were expected to remember and take note of and see from a modern gaming perspective coming into that, you wouldn't think of it. When I see an audio log in a game, normally I don't bother listening to it because it's just some background shit that I'm not interested in.
Yeah.
In System Shock, it's all plot. And not just plot, but also guidance for what to do next.
Some of them are guidance, and some of them are just background plot.
I struggle with games asking me to read their plot. And as impressive as it was that there was... I mean, it genuinely shocked me. The first time the voice acting cut in was a little... I was genuinely shocked because this game is from 1994 and I was playing the SNES in 1994.
Yeah.
And that was completely the standard of the whole thing. I mean, I played Doom on the SNES for the first time. So you can imagine this is... If I'd have seen this running to its proper capacity at the time, it would have blown my tiny little brain out. It really is massively
impressive. For a 1994 game, the voice acting, even though it seems amateurish by modern standards, and was largely done by basically people they found in the office, it's still very, very good.
Yeah, I thought so.
Particularly Terry Brosius, who ended up doing voices for both the Thief series and System Shock 2 later on. But yeah, in general, you've got some actually very well recorded and, sort of authentic sounding voices.
I mean, it's certainly a lot better than Resident Evil, which came out 2 years later.
Yes.
And okay, there is the Japanese thing that you've got to play into account on that, but for God's sake.
The only other game I can think of that predates it that has that consistent level of voice quality is Deus Ex Machina for the ZX Spectrum. And that's because that was effectively a concept album fused with a game.
I know all about Deus Ex Machina, as I've always called it, incorrectly, as I know, but I adore it. This game, Dave, is basically the game is on one side of the tape and on the other tape. So once you've loaded the game, you turn the tape over, and it's a concept album. Is it Ian Dury? I want to say it's Ian Dury.
Ian Dury did one of the voices. Right. Then there was also John Pertwee and a couple of other people who did it. You had very high quality voice talent, and it was rather expensive as far as ZX Spectrum games went. It actually came on two tapes.
Oh, did it?
Because one of them was for loading the game, and the other one you had to synchronize with the gameplay. So it was a very bizarre concept, and it didn't sell in the numbers that the developer wanted it to. But I gotta love that just audacity to create a game like that sort of inventiveness. It was the sort of game that you wouldn't see elsewhere.
It's genius. I actually, basically, as you play through it, Dave, you start the soundtrack, basically is what it is, on a separate tape as you're playing the game, and it just plays through different levels, and it doesn't seem to matter what you do. You are engaged, there is agency in what you're doing, but they will all end at a certain point.
Well, yeah, it's got to be scripted, doesn't it? It's got to be timed to match the track.
But it's not like really synced up in terms of it saying something whilst you're doing something. It's supposed to be a full-on audio-visual experience. It's basically a generational precursor to Res. It's so far ahead of something. It's incredible. And I've just looked at it on eBay, and it's only 70 quid for an original copy. I shall be buying that. I thought it was going to be far more expensive than that.
Only.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is a very expensive podcast.
As a saying I like, a fool and his money.
On that note, can I give a quick shout out to Chris, who's done previous co-hosting duties with us, who sent me a message the other day that we cost him a few quid because he was in a retro game shop and ended up buying Zool and James Pond for the Mega Drive. And guess what? He doesn't own a Mega Drive yet. So he's going to buy a Mega Drive as well. Personal interface with cyberpunk. I haven't read a lot, I haven't seen a lot. I don't consider Blade Runner cyberpunk.
I was going to say surely Blade Runner.
Blade Runner's not cyberpunk. Not as I understand cyberpunk. I mean, I'm happy to be corrected by anybody who wants to leave us a comment, because we haven't had one for a while. So that would be nice. But I think, the big cyberpunk things that exist, I haven't really engaged with.
There's a lot of cyberpunk anime, which you've not always been the biggest fan of, have you?
Well, I was very excited by the concept of anime after watching Akira, and then found out that everything else was shit.
Yeah.
So, well, there's a sweeping statement, but you know what I mean? It's like, that's how it felt at the time. So, cyberpunk in general. Rich, you seen much, done much, played much, read much?
Not much, really. Played probably a lot more than any of the other ones. Some of the prototypical works that led up to it, or sort of were inside of it. I've read a couple of Judge Dredd comics. I've sort of read some of Mobius's works. The French comic artist.
Oh yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know one of those I know of rather than directly know. Yeah, it's just one of those things that seems to have passed me by. To me, I think the closest thing that I've got involved with in terms of is sort of David Cronenberg body horror stuff, like Existenz and Videodrome, which I think is kind of related, if not directly, then certainly indirectly. But I mean, even the video games, I can't think of a cyberpunk. I mean, Flashback by sort of people sometimes consider that cyberpunk. I don't, but maybe I'm just in denial.
I've got the perfect cyberpunk game for you, which I know you've played.
What's that?
Syndicate.
Oh, yes.
Syndicate is the definition of cyberpunk.
Yeah. I haven't played Syndicate since I had it on the SNES, which apparently is like the gingerhead stepchild version of Syndicate.
There was a good PS1 version, Syndicate Wars, I think it was.
Deus Ex could be described as cyberpunk.
Yeah, definitely.
The original game I'm familiar with.
That's brilliant. I love it. Still
Yeah.
play it every now and then now.
Yeah, it's one of those genres that, it could be considered quite broad if you think about a lot of the stuff. Beneath a Steel Sky, which I've played through.
Oh, I started that but couldn't get into it.
Yeah, Snatcher and Police Knots, which I've played a bit of each.
Police Knots was an early Kojima game, wasn't it?
Yes, both of them were early Kojima games. And
Yeah.
it's interesting but kind of pervy in that sort of,
In that Kojima style.
Kojima style, but, without enough of an editor.
Oh, wow. That guy needs someone to rein him in.
Yeah. The concept of that alienation of technology has been around for quite a while. If you think back to Rossum's Universal Robot, that was basically just a metaphor for slave revolts.
Yeah.
So the whole story of robotic writing dates back to that.
So what you're saying is Pinocchio is technically cyberpunk.
Are we counting Pinocchio as a simulacron?
Yeah, he's an automaton.
Pinocchio is cedar punk.
Oh, fuck me.
I'll get this shit put in before you do this episode.
Oh, my fucking God. I don't know if I hate that or love it.
One of the more peculiar decisions in the original System Shock was to not use hidden line removal in cyberspace.
Yes.
Because it just makes it so much harder than it needs to be.
Yeah, it's all wireframe and there's no distinction between a wall and open space, is there?
Yes. No, this is a great shout. A really good point, because I did say earlier we'll come back to cyberspace. I've got two things to say about cyberspace. First is so fucking jarring. Because I was not expecting it.
But it's supposed to be. That's the point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's fantastic. But I knew very little about. I remember, much like some other games we've done, in a very, I think privileged position to have not really played or known anything about this game before going into it. Which I think there are people who are huge fans of it who would love to be in my position. But the first time we go into cyberspace, I genuinely thought something had broken. I was genuinely what, and it looks, and again I'm playing the enhanced edition, but it looks so crisp and so clean, and so it's just like this is ridiculous. This is like absolutely a complete jump cut to a completely different game. They're absolutely incredible, and also yes, but so fucking difficult because you don't know what lines are the foreground, what lines are the background, how far away the flat things are in front of the 3D thing. Are just
yeah, and it's a particularly bad decision because things as early as Elite in 1984 had realized, hey, maybe that's a good idea.
Tau Ceti on the Spectrum did it.
Yeah,
I remember that game.
What a game that is! But yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it is bizarre, and it does seem to have almost its own way around it with it tries to with the arrows and the flashing panels to show that you've impacted, but it's not good.
It really should have been done better with the consideration of make it look like an actual tunnel that people can fly into and not get lost halfway through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It didn't help that you're sort of, instead of the usual first person shooter walking along and whatever, it was very much a 3D space.
Yeah,
I suppose a predecessor to some stuff like Descent or whatever. You were moving around in 6 degrees of freedom, and it's like, or at least 5 degrees of freedom, let's say.
Yeah, and again, I think for talking about ahead of its time, it was massively so in that regard, but also not so much ahead of its time that people really should have known that this didn't. I mean, surely a fucking playtest will tell you that it's not working properly.
Yeah.
Thing is, though, I think there was an intention to make it a hard game. This wasn't a game coming out in the arcades where you'd play it for a few minutes at most each go. This is a very specifically a home PC only game. They wanted people to play it for an amount of time. They wanted people to get their money's worth. And making a game harder makes you play it for longer.
Completely. Another thing sort of related to that is there was also a Mac release, and that is like hen's teeth to get these days, but apparently it was very sophisticated. It's just incredibly hard to find these days. So
yeah, how much does it go for on eBay?
That's a good question.
You'd be lucky if you can find it on eBay, I think.
Yeah.
I just want to swing back to the 3D thing. I, Robot is a game we've mentioned before. Recently had, I think, or is about to have a re-release, remake type game. But that was an arcade game that came out in 1984 that had solid polygon graphics. So the whole wireframe thing probably should have, they really should have known better. Basically,
Absolutely,
I think we can all agree that was a mistake. And one final thing before we move on from the original, possibly because I didn't play it to the end, I watched quite a long playthrough video of it so that I could get more of the experience of playing it and all that sort of thing.
Yeah,
that's a really anticlimactic ending. It may be heresy to say.
That was a problem with the series in general, and I'd say it actually continued on until the first Bioshock, because Bioshock has what I consider to be an incredibly lackluster ending as well, and it's just like, they spent all this development time and didn't stick the landing. But I think poor endings that wasn't a surprise, and something that wasn't sort of fully plotted out from start to end, especially when you have development time constraints. And I think you still see that with games today. It's they put a lot of the time into the first, let's say, 10 hours, which they know that people are going to play, and don't necessarily put the same amount of time into later parts of the game.
I think that's fair. I think we mentioned that we were actually, again, weirdly, Parappa the Rapper, we talk about that. I think the sum, if you totaled up the amount of time that most people have played Parappa the Rapper, it would all be on the first level, probably on a demo disc, compared to the rest of the game, which is actually, it turns out, only another 40 minutes and not as good as the first level. But hey, you're absolutely right. I haven't played Bioshock, but interesting that what everyone talks about in terms of Bioshock and its ending is plot rather than gameplay. But again, that's Gen 7-itis all over, isn't it? We haven't mentioned Shodan yet, and Shodan it's certainly in the PC world quite often touted as one of your great game villains.
Yeah,
and it basically comes down to, I think it's a really interesting thing that I've not seen mentioned elsewhere, that came to me when I was watching some gameplay videos. As the protagonist, you both create her and are the only person who can destroy her. I think it's one of those really interesting things. It's like that whole cyclical Batman thing. Do you know what I mean? Batman, talking about the film Batman, because it is, the best version of Batman that exists.
You made me.
Yeah.
You made me first.
And I kind of love that about it. But Shodan, thoughts?
A lot of the appeal is the fact that she's pretty much a dominatrix.
So are you saying that a male-voiced killer AI wouldn't have been as interesting?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I did mention that Terry Brosius did a particularly good job with the voice on that. And, that distortion and so on played his part. But it's also the fact that she just sounded very, very, sort of sensuous in a sort of threatening way.
I mean, absolutely. I completely agree. I think it's a very feminine voice. I was pretty shocked to hear that apparently in the manual it's referred to as a he.
There's a couple of points in the game where they say he instead.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah.
The funny thing about the gender for me is that it's AI. It's gender agnostic. It doesn't have a gender. It's only by definition of the voice that gives it a gender.
That's a fair point.
So all it would have to do is have a male voice, and it becomes, in effect, a male character. If you could make a voice that was literally halfway between the two, neither gender, then you wouldn't be able to say what gender it is.
No, that's fair. I think that's absolutely fair. And again, when we come back to influences, I mean, as soon as it starts talking, the first thing that comes to my mind is GLaDOS from Portal.
Yeah, direct influence.
Yeah, has to be, right?
Very, very.
Yeah.
But worn on its sleeve as well. GLaDOS is a love letter to Shodan. Yeah. It's not a rip-off.
Yeah.
So the music on System Shock is shit, right?
Yes.
I'm quite a fan of it.
Hey, that's what we like, a bit of dissent in the room.
It sounds kind of bizarre by today's standards. There's a couple of tunes that I'm not a fan of. I don't like the Groves tune. There's a bunch of stuff that sort of doesn't quite work.
Yeah.
But I love the executive theme, and one of the things in the game that I think works very well, and it was kind of a thing of its time because once Red Book audio became a thing, you couldn't really do this. But dynamic music for different circumstances in the game. There are a couple of other games that did it at the same time. Monkey Island 2 was another one. But when you get into combat, the music dynamically changes.
Yeah.
And you couldn't really do that in games where, a few years later, because they were all using either Red Book audio or kind of the precursors to MP3s and whatever. So you couldn't layer.
In some points, like straight off the CD in terms of console games. The soundtrack was being played straight off the CD.
Yeah.
They didn't have the memory to hold it, did they? You couldn't load that was why CD-ROMs were so popular, because you could read very quickly off of it. So you didn't need a lot of memory.
I found with, again, watching somebody else play through, because I never got anywhere near towards the end of the game, I really liked the soundtrack on the final level.
Yeah.
I think the final level, it's got that kind of almost action movie feel. It's really, it's a bit, okay, if you want to be picky, it's not grim and it's not cyberpunk and it's not that, but it's a very, this is the end of the game type of music. And I got a lot of time for that. I thought that was great. The rest of the time, from what I heard playing it and what I heard watching it, wasn't a big fan.
Yeah, there's a handful of tracks that I think are particularly good. I don't think it's a cohesive or consistent soundtrack in the way that it should be, but where it works, I think it works very well.
From what I heard, I think that's absolutely fair. I've been racking my brain trying to remember, because I have got a thing in my brain of the first time that music changed to reflect what I was doing in a game, but I can't, unfortunately, my nearly 50-year-old brain can't pluck it out. But it certainly wasn't 1994, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's
the
cool.
next one I can think of after that, that wasn't from that era, was Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Because I remember in combat, it would make, when you attacked successfully, it would make these, sort of stabs, just major hits more, sort of impactful.
Yeah,
it's kind of a rare thing. Like there was that sort of, okay, you're in, let's say, idle stage, and then it transitions to a combat track. But it wasn't a common technique to adapt the actual track that you were playing to accommodate for things that were happening in the game, mostly because of technical technical issues.
I have played nothing of System Shock 2. Dave?
I played it back in the day when I first got my PC in around 2000.
Did you?
Like I said, it was being touted as one of the best games ever made and had influenced what I was at the time buying, things like Half-Life. So I thought, I'll check it out. It took a few years to get round to actually getting it, and by then it was quite old and clunky and didn't really gel with me. But having played System Shock, the remaster, and a bit of System Shock 2 recently, I will be buying this new one when it comes out, because I'm really interested in it. System Shock 2 does a great thing where it forces you to pick like a character class effectively.
Right.
So you make your character, and how you go through the game is dependent on the choices you've made with your character, which is one of the biggest things in things like Deus Ex. So you pick your implants, you pick your skills, and your approach to working through areas is based on that. Whether you go down the hacking element to things, or you just pick a cybernetic implant that lets you jump really high.
Me jump high.
Yeah, but there will be a part in a level that will only be accessible if you took that route.
Shit, we've moved on to System Shock 2, and you just reminded me, we didn't mention the fact that System Shock is also a Metroidvania game. There are passages that are locked to you when you first see them that you have to progress in the game to then unlock to come back to. That's what it's called. I don't know why it's a Metroidvania and not a Metroid game, because Castlevania came out 2 years after Metroid. So
this is one of those genres that's very hard to pin down its origins.
yeah,
Because you have stuff, you independently have stuff from the US, the UK, and Japan all at the same time that are kind of going down the same route
yeah,
of effectively platform adventures that lock you to certain certain areas unless you have certain items.
yeah.
And some of the American stuff actually comes first. So by that standard, we should be calling it, a below the root like or something like that. But yeah, it depends on. It's actually kind of like roguelikes in a way, because there's a strict definition for roguelikes called the Berlin interpretation, and it has a number of attributes that are considered to be high priority and low priority, and if it doesn't meet those, then it's really just a roguelite. But you could also say that for Metroidvanias, they have to be 2D, they have to be whatever.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to broaden the scope, Legend of Zelda is a Metroidvania, and in fact was one of the major influences in Symphony of the Night. But you could argue that they're all part of, let's say, a spectrum of games that cover similar attributes and which lead to similar gameplay loops.
Yeah, and it's funny you use the word spectrum, because there's an argument that the Dizzy games are Metroidvanias as well.
Yeah.
No, there really is. And if you consider the Dizzy games, then they predate everything else by about a decade.
When was the first Dizzy game? It was like
86, I guess.
Yeah. I think Below the Root was 1984, and you had Impossible Mission, which was kind of not quite.
No.
In that thing, but it was certainly a platform adventure that gave some influence to the genre. So
I mentioned Impossible Mission earlier, and it is you don't progress linearly through Impossible Mission. But there's the Ninja games were like that as well. Was it Ninja?
Last Ninja on
the C64. They were like that as well. So,
yeah.
There was also Saboteur, which is a similar thing.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Good, but I think Saboteur came after Impossible Mission because it's basically a rip-off.
Yeah, I think so. Good game. All of the key codes that you have to put in, you can just type them in if you know them. Yes. You don't need to gather the information in-game. If you know what it is, you just type it in and you're done. You're straight for it.
Much like Electrocop on the Lynx.
Oh, fucking hell, there we go.
No, I tell you what.
Was any of the key codes in Electroshock the same as the ID code to get into the Looking Glass Studios?
The 0451, the meme that has become 0451.
The first code in System Shock was the code to get into the Looking Glass Studios at the time.
Yeah. There was this whole thing, isn't it? I've done this, I found this out as well. Everyone was like, it's a reference to Fahrenheit 451.
No, it's not.
No, door code to get in the studio.
It was their door code.
Love it, but no, it's not. But this will be the last I say on it. It was the Atari Lynx, which is considered a favourite. It was 1989, and Electrocop is a game that is designed that you have to play it more than once. You will fail your first playthrough of Electrocop. No matter how good you are, you will fail it. And probably your second and third as well. It's designed that you learn those key codes on all your failed attempts to beat the game. That's the way the game is designed. And it is so... You watch people playing it now, they're completely baffled by this concept, even though there are modern games that do exactly the same thing. And it's become the rogue light structure that basically you learn things on your first playthrough that then assist you. But you have to beat, in order to beat Electrocop, you have to beat it in an hour.
Okay.
It's impossible on your first playthrough. Because you have to hack all the codes, which is why it's like System Shock. You have to beat and you have to know the route, and you have to get to level 5, and the building that you're attacking has 12 floors. And it's not like I've got to go up 5 floors. No. You've got to go up to 12, and then you've got to come back to 10, then you've got to go down to 2, and you've got to go up to... Fucking so far ahead of its time, Electrocop, and it is completely ignored by almost everybody.
It's because it was on the Lynx.
Exactly. People were too busy looking at fucking Mario on the fucking Game Boy to appreciate the fact that Electrocop was kicking its shit out of it on the Atari Lynx. End of sermon. System Shock 2. I'll tell you what, we're going to go back to Dave for System Shock 2 because I know that Rich has got a lot to say and Dave has got a little bit to say. So go on, Rich. I will say I have nothing to say about System Shock 2 other than I found it really interesting that the book I've referred to before, the 1001 Video Games You Must Play Before You Die by Tony Mott, on page 410 is Space Channel 5 and on page 411 is System Shock 2. Space Channel 5 and System Shock 2 both came out in 1999.
Yep.
And I think if there are two more different sides of the gaming coin, then I don't want to know about it because that's just bonkers. Anyway, Dave, I haven't played System Shock 2 at all. It is apparently one of the greatest video games ever made. Go.
My knowledge and experience of System Shock 2 is very limited, so it's very much over to you on this one, Rich.
So, as I mentioned at the start of the episode, I saw this on Home of the Underdogs along with the original. And the original had bounced off at the time because of the peculiar controls. This was before mouse look and all those things that were added in the sort of unofficial patch that made into the enhanced edition. But System Shock 2 just felt more like a game that I was used to playing at the time. I had played Thief the Dark Project, played other first-person shooters, and I was sort of, getting interested in RPGs at the time. I'd played Diablo 2. Can't remember if I'd yet played the Fallout games. I remember those were a couple I borrowed from a friend and fell in love with. We were swapping games, sort of giving recommendations and so on. So I pick up System Shock 2, and it is very good game. There are foibles which I can talk about in a lot of detail. I think I'll want to save some of those for later, but just it just hit a lot of high points for me.
Could you do the plot first? Because I mean, it's interesting that what we didn't talk about in System Shock 1 is it gets to the end of the game and he gets the choice to either go and work for the big bad guy or carry on being a hacker. So even though he almost ended the world, he chooses to go back and be a hacker, and that's how System Shock 1 ends. Plot. Yeah. So I don't know, and literally do not know anything about System Shock 2. So if you can pick it up from there, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So the hacker, even though the story of Citadel Station becomes big news and it changes the fortunes of the company that owned the station, who the big baddie in with the big kind of human baddie in the first one was working for
Tri-Optimum.
Yeah, Tri-Optimum Corporation. So the hacker just fades into the background, and there's such a bad reaction in the world to Tri-Optimum let this corrupt person, this corrupt fucker, just take over the station and threaten the human race with a big mining laser that was meant to be blasted towards the earth and exterminate everything. So first of all, they reformed the United Nations under the United Nations nominate, I think.
Yes, it's definitely UNN. I can't remember what it's.
Yeah, UNN, and a lot of the corporations are put under strict conditions. SHODAN becomes a boogie woman for the the world. It's just huge restraints put onto artificial intelligence.
Isn't it banned? Isn't it AI banned?
Not quite. It's basically restrained to the point where it's so locked down that it's slightly intelligent computers, no real sapience, more just it's able to talk, it's able to sort of assist but not think for itself.
Like my Google Home speakers.
Yeah. Was it with AI these days? These are looking like rather pressing moments. But so a gangster by the name of Anatoly Kerenchkin, he buys up Tri-Optimum. He's looking to go into semi-legitimate business, and it just happens that there's a scientist who has developed faster than light technology, and he he rushes a ship that can do this into production, names it the Von Braun. But UNN say, no, we're sending some people along with you. So that brings us to the main character, and the start of the game is you're going through your training missions. So you start off, if you exited a train and you're in this sort of these streets beside the training facility, and there's a weird Easter egg, just as an aside. If you sort of explore this area and you pick up a basketball that's sort of propped up and on a sort of near a pillar, and you keep that for the whole game, and you shoot it through a basketball hoop that's on the Von Braun, you get a little Easter egg, like a little reward for keeping this item through the whole game.
I love it.
So the soldier goes through his training. You effectively you pick a path between the Navy, the Marines, and the OSA, which is like psychic psionic sort of trooper thing. The Navy, hackers, Marines good with guns, OSA good with the psionics.
So it's basically Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fleet infantry or military intelligence.
I'd say, that kind of vein of stuff kind of contributed to it. But the game proper starts after your fourth year of or your third year of training. You're assigned to an actual post, which is one of the UNN soldiers aboard the Rickenbacker, which is the UNN spaceship that is attached to the Von Braun, and you end up in Tau Ceti 5, or the Tau Ceti system, and you see these signals coming from Tau Ceti 5, and they seem to be organic of some sort. So obviously, it's like, oh, we're stopping there. And they land at a planet.
That's never gone badly before.
Yeah.
Investigate an alien signal.
I wonder where they took that idea from.
Yeah, that's it. I've only just thought before you carry on. Von Braun is obviously a reference to Werner von Braun, the father of rocketry. What's Rickenbacker?
Eddie Rickenbacker was an American aviation pioneer.
Ah, right, okay.
Yeah.
I've only just sort of clicked that that's a reference to Von Braun, so Rickenbacker must be something else. Because they always are, aren't they? They're always, ship names are always like really on the nose references to things.
Yeah. I mean, like, which compares to sort of real navies, where they can either be that, or they can be sort of like abstract concepts like
invincible.
Yeah, invincible or illustrious or aventurier or whatever. Yeah. So anyway. The hacker or the soldier is kind of, he's in cryogenic storage, and you wake up and things are going wrong, and it looks like the ship has been taken over by this biological force that has controlled the ship's AI and has killed most of the crew members and converted those that haven't died into various forms of biological or bionic enemies, and it's your job to fight your way through the ship with only a voice calling you towards her from a supposed scientist on board the ship.
Ooh, we're a big fan of the word spoilers on the Cocktail My Podcast, but the fact you said supposed kind of leads me to believe that it's SHODAN all along.
Yeah, I mean, good thing is you preface it with spoilers, because that's exactly the the thing. And the biological signals on Tau Ceti 5 are the remnants of the one of the groves that was jettisoned from Citadel Station after during the game. So so the hacker kind of precipitated another disaster.
I love that. I mean, I think from what I saw around the Grove thing, it didn't look like a lot of fun to play, but I love the concept. I kind of love the fact that links into the next game. I would also say that's a lot more plot than the first game.
He's only covered the first 10 minutes of the game as well.
Yeah. I mean, once you get into the game proper, a lot of it is told through the same sort of environmental storytelling, through audio logs, and through, sort of like that remote presence pushing you on as the first game. But it does a lot more to lead you into the game than the original did.
Do you think it's a better game than the first one?
I think it is.
Undoubtedly.
By how much? By chunk or by...
It's one of my top 10 favourite games of all time. And the first one I admire for what it did.
Yeah.
But it's rough. Like, it's one of those games that, like, it was trying very hard with stuff that hadn't quite been fully baked yet. The second one, it's got its flaws, a lot of which are of the time, but it feels more like a game that people would play today. And it's influential in its own way, in the same way the original was influential to the genre. Like, a lot of what we see today is System Shock 2-esque. But aside from that, something that System Shock 2 does incredibly well, and it's it's probably one of the more defining attributes of the game, is it's a very good survival horror game.
See, that's interesting, because I remember doing my research. Our regular listeners, assuming they exist, might be amazed that we do research, but we really do every time. And Alien Isolation kept coming up as a game that was directly influenced by System Shock 2, if not System Shock. And I think that probably links into what you're saying.
I believe Prey is very similar.
Yeah.
I'd say Dead Space, it's not a first-person game, but it's kind of in that vein of things.
Yeah.
A lot of it is, a combination of the mechanics it took from Thief, some exceptional sound design, some music design that is it's peculiar, and it's sort of in the same way the first one was, although it doesn't have the dynamic music that the first one had. But it's very techno in some areas.
Oh, really?
Like very sort of bombastic and fast-paced electronic music, and in others it's kind of this foreboding ambient. Well, not quite ambient, but it's certainly a lot less in your face, and it creates this interesting environmental thing.
Yeah.
Now, the graphics, they are primitive for 1999. The Dark Engine, which the game was based on, was never terribly good at that, particularly when it came to character models. It had a bad case of, wedge face, but that's not too bad considering, the enemies you face against are mutants and cyborgs and...
Psionic monkeys.
And that's,
There's a name for a band if ever I heard one.
Not joking, psionic fucking monkeys.
They're a particular example of the sound design in game being a big factor in the terror, the horror element, because you can hear them around the corner. They were experimented on, and now they've got loose, and they're like, yeah, we're getting revenge on these people, and you can hear them screeching around the corner, and you're not particularly well armed. You start off with a wrench, like a pipe wrench, and that's your main weapon for about half the game, because the weapons you find are either broken or they degrade very quickly with very little ammo, and it means that you're constantly having to creep up to enemies and either kite them or hope that they don't hit you before you smack them to death. So it's
I'm going to interrupt you now, and this might be quite a long segue, so don't forget where you are.
Good luck.
What you've just said brings me back to something I really liked about the first System Shock, and we've talked about it in the Resident Evil episode as well. I'm a big believer that by placing restrictions on what you're able to do, that creates tension, and I think that's something that the first System Shock does really, really well. Is you've got limited things. Yes, you've got your lean around corner and all these mods and things that you can have. It's got a rear view mirror, for fuck's sake. As one of the mods you can do, and it's brilliant. But it is that kind of, by putting you in a what feels like, and what in 1994 must have felt like, an incredibly real environment, and restricting what you're able to do within that. That's what creates tension. I'm a huge believer of that. I'm a huge believer that if you can, and this is what Resident Evil does so well, by giving you a fixed camera angle, and by giving you, we talked about it in the episode, the fact that to quick kill an enemy, you have to wait until it is only just about to quick kill you, and otherwise you're going to waste all your ammo on it. And I'm a big believer in that, and basically what you've just said, selling me on System Shock 2. Sorry, Rich, continue.
So there was a weapon degradation and poor state of repair is one of the places where the game is most imbalanced in terms of the RPG mechanics, because the maintenance skill which you use to bring weapons back up to high, less likely to break, is one of the best skills in the game. The repair skill to bring them back from completely broken to operational is basically useless in a single player game, but in the later introduced co-op mode it becomes a lot more useful the more players you have, because there's only so many weapons that can go around, only so many maintenance tools you can use, and so many of the repair tools you can use. So it's one of those cases of if you spec into it in a single player game, you've wasted character points, or cyber modules as it is in the game. But if you spec into it in a multiplayer game, well, you actually have some utility for it.
You can focus, can't you? You can have one player who focuses on one thing.
Yeah, psionics, which is one of those ones that you don't dip into. You dedicate yourself to that, and maybe a few supporting skills like hacking and standard weapons, or else you go down the kind of like the Navy and Marines things. They start off different, but you can kind of spec into each other's paths, and if an optimal playthrough will have elements of both.
How ahead of its time was it with that?
Not very, because
so it's pretty contemporary, was it, at the time?
Yeah, like if you were playing something like, let's say, Daggerfall, or just generally RPGs from that era, it was the era of, let's say, second edition D&D, where you had this incredibly sophisticated and overcomplicated multi-classing system where you could choose a class and then spec into another one, but it created all sorts of, sort of weird mechanics that, were very hard to get your head around. So it wasn't as complicated as it would become later. But yeah, the one thing I'll say that did seem ahead of its time is that you could clamber up walls, sort of hoist yourself up walls.
Mantle.
Like if you,
that's called mantling.
Mantling. That was something that I haven't seen that many other games do.
Thief was the first time I saw that, and that's the same. It's the same engine.
I felt like I was doing that at moments in System Shock Enhanced Edition. There are jumps that I didn't think I'd quite made, but if I kept pushing forward and jump together, you would sort of almost scramble up.
The original System Shock was definitely more sophisticated for 1994 than System Shock 2 was for 1999. It's just that the mechanics kind of come of their time.
Yeah.
And what System Shock does System Shock 2 does better is the environmental elements, the and tying those into gameplay mechanics. Like a lot of it was taken from the Thief games.
Yeah.
And
which I also have never played.
Very good. It's deadly serious, isn't it? There's no levity, there's no let up.
Well, there are bits of levity, but it's just they're kind of wry. There's a point where the AI that controls the Von Braun is it's saying there's 138 or so days until the holiday season. Stock up now. In the middle of a foyer where people have clearly been slaughtered everywhere. There's another scene where, you go to a movie theater and, there are dispensers, replicator dispensers that will trade in nanites for various items. And normally if you hack them, you can get stuff for cheaper. But these ones give out snack items for incredibly inflated prices. And if you hack it, it just makes them more expensive.
I like that.
Yeah, so
Cool.
you can waste your ability to hack something just to, as a kind of slight to cinemas and how expensive their things are. So there are moments where it's clearly, ready to joke, but it's kind of in service of the overall atmosphere.
You're making me, as much as I know I'm not going to like it, you're making me want to play System Shock 2.
I'd say wait for the new one. What's your highest point of the game? What would you say is the thing that makes System Shock 2, like what are the standout moments of System Shock 2?
Okay, so emerging out into the sort of like you're running through the this sort of breaking down station. You've got chaos all around you and very few weapons, so you've got to creep around, and there's various enemies that are particularly intimidating, like these corrupted robots that they're protocol droids almost, and they're walking up to you and it's like, do you need help? And when they go up to you, they'll explode. And you're trying to avoid those, and the psionic monkeys and the the cyborg midwives.
Oh,
hello.
Yeah.
Go on, that needs explanation. Yeah.
So the alien force who is sort of taken over the ship, they've decided they need things to help incubate their newborns.
progeny.
Yeah, and they decide, these groups of people, they're nice and kind. Let's absorb them. Let's turn them into cyborgs. Let's give them lasers. Let's give them a low tolerance for disturbance.
I like that.
You're constantly, seeing logs that show off the conflict between the corrupt businessman Kerenchkin, who owns Trioptimum, has decided to become the captain of the Von Braun despite a lack of experience, and who, is very much in the vein of the bad guy from the first game, and the captain of the Rickenbacker, who is in fact the son of the guy from the first game, and has completely repudiated his father's ideas, but is slowly becoming corrupted by the forces that have taken over the ship.
So you're saying when the bad guy you're talking about, Diego?
Yeah, but wait. What's his full name?
Captain William Bedford Diego, I believe.
William Bedford Diego.
Bedford. Me and Dave grew up in Bedford.
Fucking random. I was watching a YouTube video this about a week or so ago, and I thought it'll be a lot easier to digest more of the game if I watch a video rather than try and force my way through it. And the first time the guy said William Bedford Diego, I was like, what? Where the fuck did that come from?
To our I guess our worldwide audience, we are the original Bedford, not Bedford Falls, Nevada, not Bedford, wherever the fuck it might be in the world. The original Bedford, like biblical Bedford. We had the Pilgrim's Progress rammed down our fucking throats as children. It's genuine. So every time the word Bedford comes up, we're like, yeah.
I always laugh every time I watch It's a Wonderful Life every Christmas.
Bedford Falls, isn't it? Yeah.
Bedford Falls, yeah.
Anyway, sorry again, Rich.
Yeah, carry on, sorry.
The way that, like the first game, the sound quality of, the voices, just the audio logs are worth listening to because they're well voice acted. They definitely imbue that sense of terror very well. Give context to the game, give you ideas on where to progress, and the main villains in the game just, they are very foreboding in the same way that SHODAN is.
With the audio logs in System Shock 2, are they as... because you cannot ignore them in System Shock. You have to listen to them, and I completely fell down because I'm awful at listening to and watching that sort of thing. Are they all as important to the gameplay as they were in System Shock 1.
Yeah, as in the fact that you do need them to find various codes or items, or another thing that's been added is because psionics are a part of the game, your character is constant. Various points in the game, there will be psychic flashbacks of moments that happened in the past. Like various humans, like they're worried about what happened after the crew came back from Tau 85, or they're fighting off mutant enemies, or they're like various things that you missed out on, but you can see the aftermath.
How are they represented? How are they shown? Is it just text, or is it?
It's like a transparent character.
Yeah,
it's an actual character model.
Yeah,
you basically see hallucinations.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm sure that's been used in it's definitely been used in later games to convey the same concept.
If you were to say which was more important, it's a very specific word I choose, whether it was System Shock 1 or 2, which would you say it was, Rich?
That's a very interesting and difficult question. Because
that's why I asked you and not Dave.
Yeah, obviously the first one came 5 years beforehand and was incredibly sophisticated for its time, but I feel like modern games take more from the second. So I would say the first, just because of chronological order, and this is clearly a game that influenced the sequel, which then went on to influence stuff. But the second one is the template that most of the games follow.
And I'm going to ask you a question I asked Dave in the Metal Gear Solid episode. In that case, if System Shock 2 is that big an influence on modern games, did System Shock 2 ruin gaming? No.
But that's I think the what ruined gaming was there were different attributes that led to that. I think it was the AAA-ness of homogenization of gaming. A lot of the experimentation in gaming was snuffed out when companies decided, let's put a lot of money into these games, which meant they couldn't really take risks, and that's only really starting to swing the other way with the uprise of the indie space. And with smaller, sort of higher profile publishers, Balatro being so highly regarded last year, then Baldur's Gate 3 winning, the Game Awards.
The likes of Devolver Digital, right?
Yeah, not that I have a very high opinion of the Game Awards, but the fact that a conventional turn-based Western, CRPG won against the sort of games that we've seen so many times winning before was a refreshing moment, because that was a genre that largely died after, let's say, the Fallout, Baldur's Gate, Planescape Torment, Neverwinter Nights, and Icewind Dale era being displaced by our action RPGs for a long time. And then suddenly there was enough of a niche looking for new games that certain publishers were like, let's give this a shot, and then they became higher profile and stuff. Yeah, I think that things are swinging in a different direction, but that the homogenization of AAA gaming is going to continue unabated.
So let's get on to drinks, and as the guest, we tend to allow our guest hosts off the whole drink segment of the show, because they're always coming along for their experience of the games. You messaged me and you said you thought you had something.
Yes.
Excellent.
So my choice is the monkey wrench.
Oh, nice choice.
Obviously, my one of my biggest thoughts when I think of System Shock 2 is the psionic monkeys. Mm-hmm. They just sit in my head, like the screaming, the fact that they're surprisingly deadly for being very small. And, like the fact that they're using psionic powers because they're really mad that somebody's experimented on them. And obviously the wrench is the first weapon you pick up in System Shock 2. It's an optional weapon in the System Shock remake. Yeah, so it's 60 milliliters of aged rum in an ice-filled glass, topped up with grapefruit juice, optionally with a few drops of bitters.
Ooh.
That sounds right up your street.
Yeah, what bitters does it say?
Not specifically, no. There is an adapted version on the Difford's Guide, which uses
Wait,
gin
what's that website again? I've never heard of that one.
It uses gin in place of rum. So 50 mils of Heyman's London Dry Gin. Although, that said, you could use Monkey 47, which furthers the monkey pun.
Nice.
Or Monkey's Shoulder. You change it to whiskey.
Yeah. There's 30 milliliters of pink grapefruit juice, 15 milliliters of Gifford's Pamplemousse liqueur.
That's a fun word to say.
Yeah.
Pamplemousse.
15 milliliters of Luxardo Aperitivo, and 4 drops of Bob's grapefruit bitters.
Bob.
Grapefruit
Nice.
bitters. Yeah.
I like the fact that you've got 30 milliliters of pink grapefruit juice and then grapefruit bitters in there as well.
It'll just pick it up. I love grapefruit. It's a much maligned thing, grapefruit. Great shout. The monkey wrench, right?
I like it. That's good.
So if we were to call you back and say that we're going to do Half-Life 2, what would you choose for that?
Well, that would be a difficult one, but I would have one for Elite.
I'm glad that Rich has already got something set up for Elite, because in case you didn't pick up through the course of the episode, Rich is going to be back whenever we do Elite, which is not actually on our schedule, but is definitely going to come up.
When we do Elite, it's just me and Rich.
Yeah, I was going to say, it is literally.
You're just going to sit there in the background reading a book.
And getting drunk, which is cool. Yeah. I'm alright with that. But 100% Rich, don't talk about your Elite cocktail, because you will need it in the future. Dave, drink?
I have 2. I have my cocktail, but I also have an honourable mention. So System Shock for me, like it is to the vast majority of people that have ever played it, is all about SHODAN.
Mm-hmm.
The evil AI that variously guides you, then tries to kill you, then tries to make you a god to rule alongside her in the sequel.
And who we have, it must be said, we have barely mentioned.
We have barely talked about that.
And it's probably the best thing about the game, but you carry on.
Yeah. Seminal moment in gaming history.
Mm-hmm.
For the reference to 2001, which you may or may not know about me, I quite like as a film.
Is it your favourite film ever made?
It is my favourite film ever made.
Without question.
Beyond any shadow of any doubt, 2001 is my favourite film ever made. But for that reason, my honourable mention is called Star Daisy.
Oh, nice.
Because if you've ever seen 2001, you know that Hal was taught the song Daisy to sing, and when he's being brutally murdered by the evil astronaut, he sings Daisy as he slowly dies. So Daisy apparently is like one of those interchangeable things like martini. You can have like a coffee martini, you can have a pineapple martini. Yeah. There are loads and loads and loads of versions of a Daisy. So I'm not entirely sure what the base thing of a Daisy is.
I didn't know that.
But the Star Daisy, which I went for basically because the name, is equal measures of gin, Calvados, orange curacao, and lemon juice, with 5 milliliters of pure cane sugar syrup and a couple of drops of saline solution, which I think that sounds quite nice, actually. Give that a go. But as we know from previous episodes, I'd give anything a go.
Yeah, try anything. Honestly, mate.
Yeah.
When I was listening to the Series 1, Episode 6 of Cocktail Mode Resident Evil earlier today, and you ended your cocktail segment with, I'd give it a shot.
Yeah. I genuinely would. I would try anything that anybody put in front of me as a cocktail. Yeah, obviously I'd sniff it first. You never know. So anyway, that's my honourable mention, the Star Daisy, because of the references to Hal in 2001. But my actual cocktail that I've gone for is Devil Woman.
Ooh.
Devil Woman is 60 milliliters of light white rum, 5 milliliters of lemon oleosacarum, which I have no idea what that is.
I am just reading words.
5 milliliters of Martini Reserva Special Bitter, and 5 milliliters of Struki Driver Moof. So that's rum. That's a double shot of rum with some other things for a little bit of flavour.
I love how you basically brutalize the art of mixology, Dave, every time.
No, I'm sorry. If you've got 60 of something, and then 5 of something else, 5 of something else, and 5 of something else, what's the bigger number there?
What you said is 5 of something else, 5 of something else, 5 of something else. That is a third of that cocktail.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
It's a sixth of that cocktail. I think Rich might have gone to bed.
Do you want to have another go at the maths?
Nope. I just keep saying numbers. That's a 12th of that. That's a 30 seconds. That's a 48. I can edit this. I've got all day, mate. I've got all day.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I don't need to be up. So the garnish, and I love this, garnish with a hibiscus pickled onion.
A what?
A pickled onion.
A
Hibiscus pickled onion.
Hibiscus? Is that like in the pickle?
I don't know. Yeah, basically you know when you like infuse vodka.
I know
with,
what a pickle is, mate, but I'm just saying, is
I don't fucking know.
So you're saying
it does say okay. If you want the description from Diffords, because you can't be bothered to read it yourself.
That's why you're here, mate, to talk to me.
In a jar of pickled onions, add 50 grams of dried hibiscus flower to each litre of vinegar and infuse for 3 hours. Double strain of vinegar to remove the flowers and return to the jar. It's a pickled onion with a little bit of hibiscus.
Thank you for answering the question, Dave. I genuinely think it's important because do you remember when we've talked before about a bacon fat washed bourbon?
Oh yeah, that's
when you
delicious.
Find the bacon fat washed bourbon recipe on Diffords or wherever you find it. To be fair,
bourbon or bourbon?
Bourbon is the correct for now. You're absolutely 100% correct. Bourbon. It will say leave your bacon fat in your bourbon for a set amount of time. Don't leave it for longer. It's horrific. I forgot about mine. It was horrible.
Oh no!
Horrible. And
it started to solidify.
No, it hadn't started to. But solidification is the idea. So the idea is.
Oh, okay.
So you add your bacon fat to your bourbon, then you leave it for a certain amount of time, and then you separate the two, and it's easier because you've put your bourbon in your fridge or your freezer. But if you accidentally leave it for, I don't know, a month, you will find that nasty fatty greasiness has imparted itself into the bourbon, and it's not very nice at all. So yes.
Did you leave yours for a month?
It was about a month, yeah.
Oh God!
Yeah. I assumed that there was no such thing as too long.
I assumed there was no such thing as too poisonous.
Anyway.
Fucking hell. How are you alive?
Luck. Mostly luck.
Yeah, luck rather than
mostly
judgment.
Luck.
Anyway, Ana Alicia Herrera says of her drink, the inspiration comes from something I learned in New Orleans when I first became a bartender. Devil Woman is a new twist on a classic Gibson martini.
Oh yeah, I know Gibson. Yeah, nice. Yeah, I see that actually.
Yeah. So this was the Mexican Bacardi Legacy 2018 winning cocktail.
Bacardi Legacy. We haven't mentioned them for a while, have we?
It keeps coming back.
I think that basically speaks to the quality of cocktail that we choose.
So yeah, it's created in Pal Real, Guadalajara, Mexico.
Nice. Rich, do you drink cocktails much? Or you mentioned wine earlier. Is that your tipple, or are you a lager man, or what is it you drink?
I drink wine, I drink lager, I drink cider, I drink whiskey. I don't drink cocktails much. I've got into some of them more recently, but they tend to be rather simple ones. Your sort of rum and cokes and whatever.
Yeah, I've been drinking rum and coke all night. It's an absolute. The reason rum and coke is a classic is because it's fucking delicious.
Yeah.
There is no, honestly, it is one of, I think, when it's not really, it's gone so far now, it's so basic, it's not really a cocktail, but of all the things, like, gin and tonic, whiskey and coke, I just think rum and coke is a brilliant thing. Squeeze a lime in it, and it's got a name. They call it a Cuba Libre. So yeah, honestly, it's a brilliant thing, a rum and coke. It really is.
So what have you got for us?
So for those who have played the System Shock remake, you might remember as you go out about your play, you pick up various random shit. And there are lots of wine bottles, there's champagne bottles and things like that. And amongst them, there are two drinks. There is a whiskey bottle and an amaretto bottle that have got a bit of provenance about them. They are the Trioptimum branded drinks that you pick up along the way. There are of all the drinks you pick up, there's vodka, there's gin, there's literally champagne and wine. And they're just exactly that. But the Trioptimum branded drinks are whiskey and amaretto, bizarrely. And so I had a bit of a search around that, and I found a thing called the Explorer Martini, and I think that kind of fits, because you do. I spent 5 hours technically exploring, or to give it its proper name, lost. in the first level of the game, and so I thought that kind of fit quite well. So it's basically it's a really nice 3/3 recipe: Scotch, amaretto, and sherry. So you basically take whatever you want to choose, whatever your measure is. You can either in the traditional methods, the Harry Craddock's method of cocktails, is you build up to about 100 ml. So you could say a shot of whiskey, a shot of amaretto, a shot of sherry. You could, if you're feeling particularly adventurous and like you don't want to wake up tomorrow, you could say a double shot of each. It doesn't matter. It's an equals measure. What is in cocktail terms normally coined a perfect. So whenever anything is equal measures of everything, they call it a perfect. So a perfect martini is 50% gin, 50% vermouth, for example. So that's kind of where that comes from, and it's as simple as that. I say Scotch whiskey, amaretto, and sherry, which didn't turn up in the sherry didn't turn up in the inventory of System Shock, but it's a nice little mix, and I love a martini, and as we've mentioned before, there are several billion types of martini, but this is a nice one. I think the fact that it starts with whiskey rather than gin or vodka, it just sets it on edge, and it kind of I did it previously because my previous one was rum. The Nottingham martini was a rum based martini rather than vodka or gin. But I think this kind of goes in nice. It's a nice drink, and it is obviously, as I guaranteed a long time ago, I will not recommend a cocktail I haven't tried. Whiskey and amaretto is a godfather, and a bit of sherry on top of it, and it just lightens it up, and it kind of I think is better. I genuinely believe that whiskey, Scotch whiskey and amaretto is a godfather. I reckon that your Explorer Martini, which is the same but with 30 ml or equal measure of sherry in it, is a nicer cocktail.
I think that'd be interesting because the sherry had quite an element of sweetness to it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it apparently there are lots of different sorts of sherry. In the UK, when we talk about sherry, we tend to talk about cream sherry, which isn't creamy at all. It's still whatever sherry is basically a type of what's the word? Reinforced. It's not enforced, is it? What's the word? Fortified wine.
Any provenance? Any history?
That I know of. Not that I read, I should say. On the it's basically quite a recent cocktail. Comes from Barbados in about 2019, and the apparently what we were just talking about with the different sorts of sherry makes it a different cocktail. I'm not sure my palate is quite educated enough to pick up on that, but I really enjoyed it just using that traditional, what you'll find in most people's, right at the back. If you dig around right in the back of your drinks cabinet, you'll find a bottle of sherry, and chuck that in there with some whiskey, not bourbon, whiskey, and
amaretto. No, that sounds good. I like the sound of that.
Nice. What do you reckon, Rich? Would you have a shot of that?
Sounds interesting.
No. I've loved having Rich along tonight. It's been brilliant. I'm not just saying it for the fun of it. Every time we have a guest along, I think it raises our game a bit, Dave, to be honest with you, mate.
It makes us a bit more professional.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Well,
Really.
it makes me a bit more professional.
It makes me a bit more drunk.
Yeah, there we go.
Is what it does. But genuinely,
No, it has been great fun.
that. Yeah, it has. So next time out, we're going to be doing Virtua Racing on arcade and the Mega Drive and the Mega
32X.
Mega 32X. That's the fucker.
The only game that anybody ever bought on the 32X.
And that is to tie in with both the release of a new Formula One film and the British Grand Prix. So we're hoping to sort of cross that thing and talk about. I mean, it's a magnificent game, Virtua Racing. My favourite of the Virtua games. So we'll be talking about that next time on Cocktail Mode, the podcast where gaming, like alcohol, is in our blood.